My name is Cassie Reed. I'm 34. 3 months ago, I flew 22 hours to attend my sister's wedding. When I arrived at the venue, my own parents blocked the entrance and told me to leave. Only family is allowed, my mom said. You weren't invited. I stood there in the dress I'd picked out 2 months earlier, holding the gift I'd wrapped the night before on my hotel bed, and watched my mother's face show nothing. No guilt, no hesitation. Just a door closing. I'd signed every vendor contract for that wedding, every single one. My name, my credit card. I'd paid the deposit months ago and never thought twice about it. 3 days later, she called. Not to apologize. She called about a bill. $38,000. And what I said next, she didn't expect. Before I tell you what happened, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop your location in the comments too. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back to last November. The day my sister announced her engagement. A Tuesday evening in Sydney, late spring rain against my window. My phone buzzed. FaceTime from Lila, my younger sister, 26, freshly graduated, still living 10 minutes from our parents in Pine Ridge, North Carolina. Lila's face filled the screen, glowing. Behind her, our mother Patricia was arranging something on the kitchen counter. I'm engaged. Ethan proposed last night at the vineyard. It was perfect. I felt genuine happiness. Lila, that's amazing. Mom, say hi to Cassie, Lila said. Patricia leaned into frame. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Hi, honey. Exciting news, right? It really is. I'll start looking at flights. When's the date? A pause. Patricia glanced at Lila, then back at me. Oh, don't go spending a fortune on a plane ticket. It's just a small wedding. Mom, it's Lila's wedding. I'm coming. Well, we'll see. She straightened up. Anyway, we've got a lot of planning to do. She disappeared from the frame. I listened and smiled and made notes, but something sat heavy in my stomach. That was the first time in 2 years I had a reason to go home. I should have paid more attention to how hard my mother was trying to keep me from it. 2 weeks later, Patricia called, not Lila. Patricia on a Wednesday morning, which meant she'd been thinking about this since she woke up. Cassie, I need to talk to you about something practical. The venue requires a credit card on file, she said. Your father and I, you know our credit isn't great after the refinance. And Lila just graduated. She doesn't have the history. I already knew where this was going. The caterer needs the same thing, she continued. And the florist and the photographer. 4 contracts total. Just someone with good credit to sign. How much are we talking? Total comes to about $41,500, but you'd only put down $3,500 as a deposit. The rest gets charged after the event. We'll handle the payments after. I promise. I'd heard that promise before. When I was 22, I co-signed a car loan for my father. Took me 3 years to untangle it from my credit report. When I was 28, I wired $4,000 for a plumbing emergency that turned out to be Lila's semester tuition. But this was my sister's wedding.
Fine, I said.
Send me the contracts. I signed every document that week. Over the next 3 months, the wedding took shape, and I watched it happen from the outside. Lila created a group chat called Whitmore Wedding Crew. I wasn't added. I found out when she accidentally forwarded me a photo of bridesmaid dress options. I wasn't one of the ladies. I called Lila twice to ask about the dress code, seating, whether she wanted a toast. The first time, she said she'd get back to me. The second time, she let it go to voicemail and texted an hour later. Super busy with planning. Talk soon. I never received a formal invitation, printed or digital. I told myself that was normal. She's family. You don't send your own sister an invitation. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Lila posted a photo from the rehearsal dinner. Bridesmaids, Patricia beaming beside her. Caption: my whole family, my whole world. I wasn't in it. I hadn't been invited to the rehearsal dinner. I almost asked why, but I talked myself out of it. Maybe I was overthinking it. I booked my flight. I requested a full week of PTO, 5 of my 20 days. Round trip Sydney to Charlotte, $2,100. 4 nights at the only decent hotel in Pine Ridge, $720. Lila's gift, a little cruise-it cookware set she'd admired during a FaceTime, $680. Total out-of-pocket before I touched North Carolina soil, $3,500, exactly the deposit I'd already paid on the contracts. On the first leg of the flight, somewhere over the Pacific, I practiced the toast I'd been drafting for weeks. Nothing too long, maybe 2 minutes. How Lila used to make me play wedding with her stuffed animals when she was 5. How she always cast me as the priest, never the bride. I thought people would laugh. When we landed in LA, I texted Patricia. Just landed. 1 more flight. I can't wait to see everyone. No response for 40 minutes. Then, just before boarding. Okay, busy. See you tomorrow. 5 words. No exclamation point. No safe travels. I put my phone away and told myself everything would be fine once I got there. I checked into the Dogwood Inn at 9:30 Friday night. Hung my navy dress in the closet. Set the wrapped cookware on the desk. Called Lila, 4 rings, voicemail. Texted Patricia. Checked in. What time should I arrive tomorrow? 1 hour later. Ceremony 2 p.m. That was it. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at myself in the mirror. I'd flown 22 hours. I'd signed $41,500 in contracts. My mother couldn't give me more than 2 words at a time. The last time I'd been in North Carolina was for my grandmother's funeral. Patricia barely spoke to me then either. At the reception, someone asked how many children she had. She said, "Just the one, Lila." I was standing 6 feet away holding a plate of potato salad. I ironed my dress that night like I was preparing for a job interview. In a way, I was auditioning to be part of my own family. Lying in the dark, I did something I'd been afraid to do. I added up the years. The calls that never came. The birthdays where Patricia texted HBD at 11 p.m. or forgot entirely. The graduation photos on her mantle. 3 of Lila, 0 of me. If I kept paying and showing up and pretending the silence didn't sting, what would I lose? Not money. I'd lose myself. But that night I chose to believe. One more time. This is the last time I'll show up hoping for something they've never once offered freely. Sleep came slow and thin. Saturday, 1:45 p.m. Whispering Pines Barn. White fences, fairy lights strung between oak trees, gravel paths lined with mason jars and wildflowers. It looked like a magazine spread. I smoothed my dress, picked up the gift box, and walked toward the entrance. I spotted my father first. Robert stood near the barn's double doors in a rented suit, shaking hands with someone. When he looked up and saw me, his smile dropped. His eyes went wide, then narrow, then down at his shoes. He turned and went inside. I kept walking. The double doors opened, and my mother stepped out. Patricia wore champagne silk. Her hair was done. Her jaw was set like concrete. She stopped directly in my path. Not welcoming. A barricade. Cassie. Low. Controlled. "Hi, Mom. I made it." She didn't hug me. She didn't step aside. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for Lila's wedding, Mom. You need to leave. Now." The words landed like a slap. I flew 22 hours. "Lower your voice." Her eyes flicked to passing guests. "People are watching." "Mom, I'm your daughter." She stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper that cut deeper than any shout. "Only family is allowed inside. You weren't invited." I stood there, heels in the gravel. Not invited? I signed every contract for this wedding. I paid the deposit. This isn't about money. This is about what's appropriate. Behind her, through the half-open barn door, I could see white chairs, eucalyptus garlands, a string quartet warming up. Everything I'd funded with my signature. Then a voice from inside. Warm, southern, confident. "Patricia, who's that? Everything all right?" Eleanor Whitmore stepped through the doors in lavender and pearls. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of woman who never embarrasses herself in public. Not once. Her gaze landed on me, open, expectant. "Patricia, everything all right out here?" Patricia turned on like a switch. Honey warm. "Oh, it's nothing, Eleanor." Just a distant relative who got the wrong venue. Distant relative. She said it while looking right at me. Eleanor studied my face. I thought you only had one daughter, Patricia. The silence lasted 2 seconds. It felt like 20. Patricia laughed, bright, brittle. I do. This is a cousin from out of town. She's just confused about the schedule. Eleanor nodded slowly, glanced at me once more, then touched Patricia's arm. Well, tell her the ceremony starts in 10 minutes. She went back inside. I looked at my mother. In her eyes, no guilt, no shame. Just raw, cornered fear. The kind that comes when a lie you've been feeding for months is about to choke you. A cousin, I said. Cassie, please. You told them you only have one daughter. It's complicated. How long have you been telling people I don't exist? She didn't answer. She stared toward the parking lot, willing me to disappear. That was when I understood. She didn't forget to invite me. She erased me. And she'd been doing it for years. Every muscle wanted to walk through those doors. To stand in the middle of that ceremony and say, loud enough for Eleanor and every guest to hear, my name is Cassie Reed. I am Patricia's eldest daughter. And I paid for every flower, every plate, and every note that string quartet is playing. I didn't. I crouched down and set the gift box on the stone step.
Gently.
Keep the gift, I said. It's for Lila. Patricia's shoulders dropped half an inch. Relief. She thought it was over. Thank you, Cassie. This is really for the... Don't. I held up one hand. Don't explain. Don't justify. I heard you. I turned and walked back down the gravel path. Past the mason jars. Past the couples arriving, laughing. I got in my rental car, closed the door, and cried. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. Chest shaking, mouth shut. Because even alone in a parking lot, you've been trained not to make a scene. Through the open windows, I heard the string quartet begin Pachelbel's canon. The ceremony was starting. I started the engine and pulled out. In the rearview mirror, Whispering Pines barn shrank to a speck of light. I didn't slam a single door. I didn't raise my voice once. For the first time, leaving felt like the strongest thing I'd ever done. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, Cassie, why didn't you just say it? Right there in front of everyone? Trust me, I asked myself that the entire drive back. But let me ask you something. If your mother looked you dead in the eye and called you a cousin in front of a stranger, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story is hitting close to something real, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Back at the Dogwood Inn, I sat on the bed, still in my dress, mascara smudged. The toast I'd written was still open in my notes app. I closed it without reading it. Then I opened my laptop. For emails, confirmations from vendors, all addressed to me as the contract holder. I read every word this time. Whispering Pines Barn, contract holder, Cassie Reed. Deposit paid $1,200. Remaining balance $14,800. Due within 5 business days post-event. Southern Comfort Catering. $12,600 remaining. Bluebonnet Floral. $6,200 remaining. Whitaker Photography. $4,400 remaining. My name. My card. My signature. Scanned and attached in PDF. Total outstanding. $38,000. The barn was mid-reception by now. Toasts being made. Patricia hugging Lila. The Whitmores clinking glasses. All of it happening under contract signed by someone they'd just called a cousin. I didn't make any calls that night. I just let the numbers repeat in my head. My phone rang at 9:47 p.m. Aunt Vivian. Vivian Mercer, my mother's older sister. 62, retired school principal. The kind of woman who says exactly what she thinks and has never once apologized for it. Patricia called her difficult. Everyone else called her honest. Cassie, where were you? I didn't see you at the wedding. I told her everything. The blocked entrance, the whisper. Only family. The word cousin. Eleanor's question. Patricia's answer. Silence. The kind where you can hear someone deciding exactly how angry to be. She told them you don't exist? Vivian's voice went flat. At the reception, Patricia stood up during the toast and said, Our little family, Robert, myself, and our Lila. I thought it was strange. I almost said something. A pause. Cassie, those vendor contracts, whose name are they under?
Mine.
All of them. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted. Still angry, but with something harder underneath. Strategic. Then you listen to me, honey. Your mama told a room full of people you don't exist. You don't owe that room a single cent. Sunday morning, I woke to a new Instagram post from Lila, a carousel of wedding photos. The family portrait. Robert, Patricia, Lila, Ethan, Eleanor, Richard Whitmore. 6 people. 2 families joined. 1 family short a daughter. Caption: surrounded by everyone who matters. Hashtag Whitmore forever. I read it 3 times. Then I opened my email. The venue invoice had come in overnight, cheerful, with a Little Barn logo. Your remaining balance of $14,800 is due by Thursday, March 6th. Below it, caterer, florist, photographer, all time-stamped Saturday evening, all addressed to Cassie Reed. $38,000 due Thursday. I looked at the Instagram post. Everyone who matters. Then I looked at the invoices. Something shifted. Not a snap. Not sudden rage. It was quieter. Like a lock turning. Like a door that had been stuck for years finally clicking open. I was the only person who paid for this wedding. I was the only person not in those photos. And I was the only person receiving invoices for a party I'd been thrown out of. Something had to give. And it wasn't going to be me. Not this time. That afternoon, a voicemail from Lila. Not a call. She didn't try to actually talk to me. Hey, Cassie. So the wedding was amazing. Like literally perfect. Anyway, sorry things were kind of weird yesterday. Mom said it was for the best. Honestly, I think she was right. It would have been a lot to explain. But I just wanted to say thanks for helping with the vendor stuff. Seriously, you're the best, big sis. Love you. I listened twice. Sorry things were kind of weird. Not. I'm sorry Mom turned you away at the door. Not. I had no idea. I would have fought for you. And that last line, you're the best, big sis. She calls me that when she needs something. Only when she needs something. I set my phone face down on the nightstand. The invoices were due Thursday. My family had just told 120 people I didn't exist. And my sister had left a voicemail that said, "Thanks for paying." I had 4 days to decide who I was going to be. Sunday night, I searched. Am I legally responsible for vendor contracts I signed for someone else's event? The answers were consistent. The person whose name is on the contract holds the legal obligation, but also holds the authority. I could authorize payment. I could decline it. I could redirect the invoices to the party that received the services. I picked up my phone and called Whispering Pines Barn. Hi, Julie. My name is Cassie Reed. I'm the contract holder for the Whitmore Reed event this past Saturday. I need to inform you that I will not be authorizing the final payment. I'm formally requesting that the outstanding balance be redirected to the event hosts, the Reed family in Pine Ridge, North Carolina. Then the caterer. Same script. Then the florist. Then the photographer. For calls. 12 minutes total.
I didn't yell.
I didn't threaten. I didn't explain why. I just said one word, politely and firmly, no. When I was done, I closed my laptop, brushed my teeth, and slept through the night for the first time in 2 days. Monday morning, I changed my flight, first available seat back to Sydney. I packed in 10 minutes. Checked out before dawn. The same front desk woman smiled and asked how the wedding was. Memorable, I said. On the drive to Charlotte, I passed through Pine Ridge one last time. Past the diner, the hardware store, the Baptist church where I was baptized at 12. Past the house I grew up in. The porch light was still on. My name not mentioned once inside. When I was 10, Patricia told me, "Cassie, you're the big sister. You have to be strong for Lila." I'd been strong for 24 years. I turned onto the highway and didn't look back. 22 hours later, I landed at Kingsford Smith. Gray sky, drizzle, the most beautiful weather I'd ever seen. The vendors would start making calls by Tuesday. The invoices would land by Wednesday. My phone would ring. I was sure of that. Tuesday, 3 p.m. Sydney time. Cassie, hi honey. Sweet, light, the voice she uses when she wants something. How was your flight? Fine.
Good.
Listen, I just got the strangest call from the venue. The bill is $38,000. How do we handle this? We don't handle it, Mom. You handle it. Excuse me? I removed my authorization because I'm not responsible for an event I wasn't invited to. Don't be dramatic. You know this was just a misunderstanding. You told Eleanor Whitmore I was a distant relative. You told her you only have one daughter. That's not a misunderstanding, Mom. That's a choice. Longer silence. The sweetness evaporated. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? You raised me. I'm grateful for that. But you also stood in front of your daughter and told a stranger she doesn't exist. Those two things can both be true. You're blowing this out of proportion. $38,000. That's the proportion. Your father is stressed. His blood pressure. If something happens to him, that's on you. Dad stood right there and said nothing. He made his choice too. Silence. You said I wasn't family, I said. So the family's bill is the family's responsibility. She hung up. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was normal. She called back 40 minutes later. Full throttle. Do you have any idea what you've done? The venue is calling me. The caterer is calling me. I'm getting invoices forwarded to my email with your name crossed out and mine written in. Do you know how humiliating that is? I imagine it's about as humiliating as being called a cousin at your own sister's wedding. That is not the same thing. You're right. Yours cost $38,000. I raised you. I fed you. I drove you to school every single day for 12 years. And now, because of one misunderstanding, you're going to bankrupt your own family? It wasn't as a misunderstanding. Fine, Cassie. You want to play this game? I'll tell everyone. I'll tell the whole town what kind of daughter abandons her family over money. Go ahead. I'd rather be the daughter you badmouth than the daughter you pretend doesn't exist. That stopped her. I heard her pull in a breath, sharp, involuntary. Then the final weapon, the one she always keeps in reserve. Your father could have a heart attack. If he ends up in the hospital, that blood is on your hands. The guilt grenade. She'd thrown it when I moved to Sydney, when I skipped Thanksgiving, when I stopped sending money without being asked. Dad's health is between him and his doctor, I said. Not me and my credit card. She hung up. I put the kettle on and made tea. By Wednesday, Patricia had activated the family phone tree. Lila called first, crying the theatrical kind she's perfected since childhood. Cassie, please. Ethan and I just got married. We don't have $38,000. If you don't pay, we have to. You're ruining us. Lila, did you know Mom told the Whitmores I don't exist? A sniffle. A pause. I mean, she said it would be easier that way. With the Whitmores, they're traditional, and having a daughter overseas who's not married. It was just simpler. It wasn't personal. You knew before the wedding. I didn't think they'd actually turn you away. But you didn't stop them. Silence. More sniffing. Can we please just focus on the bill? Maybe it's time someone gave the Whitmores honest answers. She hung up. Robert called that afternoon. My father almost never calls. Hearing his voice felt strange, like picking up an old tool you'd forgotten you owned. Cassie, your mother is very upset. Can you be flexible on this? For the family? Dad, did you know she told people I'm not your daughter? A long exhale. The sound of a man who spent 35 years choosing the path of least resistance. That's not exactly what happened. Were you there when she called me a distant relative? Right in front of me. Nothing. Then, very quietly, a click. Every single one of them hung up when the questions got real. Aunt Vivian didn't wait for permission. She never has. Thursday morning, the same day the invoices were due, Vivian called Eleanor Whitmore directly. She got the number from the wedding program she'd kept in her purse. Eleanor, my name is Vivian Mercer. Patricia Reed's older sister. I'm calling because there's something you need to know. Patricia has 2 daughters. The older one is Cassie. She's 34, lives in Sydney. She's the one who signed every vendor contract for that wedding. And on Saturday, Patricia stopped her at the door and told her to leave. Vivian said the silence on Eleanor's end lasted a full 10 seconds. The woman Patricia introduced as a distant relative, Vivian continued, was her firstborn daughter. Cassie flew 22 hours. She paid the deposit out of her own pocket. And Patricia turned her away because she'd been telling your family the Reeds only had one child. Eleanor's voice went cold.
Thin.
Why would Patricia do that? You'd have to ask her. But I can tell you this. That girl flew 22 hours, signed every check, and got turned away like a stranger at the door. And she still didn't make a scene. That's more grace than my sister deserves. I didn't ask Vivian to make that call. But when she told me she had, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt seen. For the first time, someone in my family said out loud, "What happened to you is wrong." Has anyone ever been that person for you? The one who broke the silence when no one else would? Or are you still waiting? Tell me in the comments. And subscribe if you want to hear how this ends. Thursday afternoon, I emailed each vendor. Identical message, written with the precision of someone who writes technical documentation for a living. Dear vendor name, this email serves as formal notice that I, Cassie Reed, the undersigned contract holder, do not authorize any further charges to my credit card on file. I am formally requesting that all outstanding invoices be redirected to the event hosts, the Reed family of Pine Ridge, North Carolina. Regards, Cassie Reed. For emails. For confirmations within the hour. Julie from Whispering Pines replied, "Understood, Ms. Reed. We've updated our records." Then I called my bank, canceled the card linked to the contracts, ordered a replacement with a new number. $38,000 in outstanding charges would now route directly to the people who'd thrown the party. The deposits, $3,500, were gone. Non-refundable. Combined with flights, hotel, and the gift, I was out $7,000 total. I sat with that number. $7,000. The price of learning that I was never going to be enough for them. That no amount of signing, paying, flying, or showing up would earn me a seat at a table they'd built without a chair for me. Honestly, it was a bargain. I closed my laptop, rinsed my mug, and went for a walk along the Bondi to Coogee coastal path. The ocean was gray-blue, the air sharp, and I felt, for the first time in years, like I owed nothing to anyone. Friday morning, one last thing. An email to Patricia, Robert, and Lila. I drafted it 3 times. The first 2 were too emotional. Third attempt, clean, direct. Patricia, Robert, and Lila, I have formally removed my payment authorization from all vendor contracts associated with Lila's wedding. The outstanding balance of $38,000 has been redirected to you as the event hosts. I will not be discussing this further. I wish Lila and Ethan a wonderful marriage. Going forward, please do not contact me regarding financial matters. If any of you want a relationship with me, it starts with honesty, not invoices. Cassie. I read it 4 times. Made sure there was nothing petty, vindictive, or cruel. There wasn't. It was a boundary, clean as a line on a map. I hit send. Then I stood by the window with a cup of tea, looking at the jacaranda tree in the courtyard below, dropping purple flowers all over the neighbor's bicycle. Not much, but it's mine. I pay the rent. I chose the curtains. Nobody here has ever told me I don't belong. For months, maybe years, I'd been carrying a weight I couldn't name. The constant calculation. Am I doing enough? If I give more, call more, fly home one more time, will they finally see me? Standing in that kitchen, I felt the weight lift. I didn't write that email to hurt them. I wrote it so I'd stop hurting myself. Aunt Vivian kept me updated. Eleanor Whitmore called Patricia the same afternoon Vivian dropped the truth. The conversation, relayed through a mutual friend, went about how you'd expect. You lied to us, Patricia. Steady, not loud. The Whitmores don't do loud. We welcomed your family into ours based on trust. That trust is broken. Patricia tried to explain. Cassie and I have been estranged. Estranged? Vivian says your daughter signed every contract for this wedding. That's not estranged. That's exploited. Eleanor told Patricia the Whitmores would not be covering the $38,000. We didn't sign those contracts. Apparently, neither did you. 4 days into the marriage, Ethan confronted Lila. "You have a sister? She paid for our entire wedding? And your mother kicked her out?" "It's complicated, babe." "It's not complicated, Lila. It's a lie. Your family lied to my family on our wedding day." The newlyweds' first real fight happened over a sister the groom didn't know existed, and a bill neither of them could afford. Lila and Ethan took out a personal loan for the $38,000. The Whitmores co-signed, not out of generosity, but because their name was on the event and they didn't want vendors coming after them. The fairy tale wedding now had a monthly payment attached to it. Pine Ridge is the kind of town where everyone knows your business by Tuesday and has an opinion by Wednesday. The story made its way through the Baptist church, the diner on Main Street, and the Whitmore Realty waiting room. The course stayed the same. Patricia Reed hit her eldest daughter, turned her away at the wedding, and sent her the bill. Patricia's neighbor of 19 years stopped her in the church parking lot. "Patricia, I had no idea you had 2 girls. How come I've never met Cassie?" Patricia tried her rehearsed script. Bev nodded slowly. Vivian tells it a bit different. Patricia switched to the Methodist church 2 towns over, where nobody knew the Reeds. And Patricia called Vivian, voice shaking. "You destroyed my family." Vivian's response was brief. "I didn't expose you, Patricia. I just stopped covering for you." 2 weeks after the wedding, a long text from Lila. "Cassie, I'm so sorry about everything. I didn't know Mom was going to say those things to the Whitmores, I swear. Ethan is furious with me. The loan payments start next month. Could you maybe cover part of the balance? Even half? I'll pay you back. You're my sister, and I love you, and I just need help right now." I read it 3 times, looking for something specific. An apology for turning me away. An acknowledgement that she knew and didn't stop it. A single sentence that said, "What happened to you at the door was wrong." It wasn't there. She apologized for the mess, not for the wound. There's a difference. I typed my reply carefully. "Lila, I'm sorry you're dealing with this.
I really am.
But I can't help financially. The boundary I set isn't about money. It's about being treated like family, real family, not the kind that gets erased when it's inconvenient. When you're ready to talk about that, I'm here." She didn't respond. 1 month after the wedding, an email from Robert. Subject line, "From Dad." My father has never written me anything longer than a birthday card. "Cassie, I know I should have said something that day at the barn. I didn't. I stood there while your mother handled it, and I didn't open my mouth. I don't have a good reason. I was a coward. That's the truth. Your mother and I are working on the bill. I'm writing because I wanted you to know I'm sorry. I should have walked you inside. I'll carry that, Dad." I read it on the train home, and once more on the couch with the lights off. It wasn't perfect. It didn't fix anything, but it was honest. And it was the first honest thing anyone in my family had said to me since this started. A week later, I wrote back. "Dad, thank you. That means more than you know. I'm not ready to come home or pretend everything is fine, but I read your email, and I'll keep reading it. Cassie."
Short.
Careful. Leaving the door open exactly 1 inch, not wide enough to walk through, but not locked. 6 months have passed since that Saturday at Whispering Pines Barn. I got promoted, senior software engineer. My boss cited leadership under pressure in the review. She didn't know the half of it. I started seeing a therapist. Not because of the wedding, but because of the 34 years before it. We've been unpacking something she calls functional overresponsibility, the belief that if I perform well enough, sacrifice enough, carry enough, the people I love will finally see me. It's the engine that powered every check I wrote, every flight I booked, every time I said fine when I meant this hurts. I video call Aunt Vivian every other Sunday. She makes coffee, I make tea. Patricia and Robert have paid off $12,000 of the $38,000 using a chunk of their retirement savings. The rest is on Lila and Ethan's loan. The monthly payments are a source of tension. Eleanor still hasn't forgiven Patricia. Lila and Ethan are in counseling. Ethan's a decent man who's trying, but the foundation cracked on day 1, and cracks like that don't seal easily.
Patricia hasn't called me.
Vivian says she refers to the situation as Cassie's tantrum. I suppose that's easier than calling it what it is. I don't hate my mother. I've spent a lot of therapy hours making sure of that. She built an image of a perfect family because the real one felt like it wasn't enough. And somewhere along the way, I became the piece that didn't fit the frame. That's not an excuse. It's just what happened. I'm not telling you this story, so you'll hate my mother. She's flawed. She's scared. I'm telling you this because maybe you're living a version of it. Maybe you're the one who flies 22 hours, literally or metaphorically, to show up for people who won't hold the door open for you. Maybe you're the one signing the contracts, covering the costs, absorbing the silence, and calling it love because you don't know what else to call it. I did that for a long time. I called it duty. I called it family. I called it being the bigger person. And every time I swallowed an insult or pretended the empty chair at the table didn't bother me, I lost a little piece of myself. A boundary isn't punishment. It's not revenge. It's not a weapon. A boundary is the moment you say, I'm worth more than this. And then you act like it. $38,000. That's what my freedom cost. And I don't regret a single penny I didn't pay. If you're the one who always pays, emotionally, financially, spiritually, for a seat at a table that was never built for you, maybe it's time to build your own table and sit at the head of it. I didn't lose my family that day at Whispering Pines Barn. I found myself. And honestly, she was worth the wait. Thank you for staying until the end. I want to ask you, if you were me, would you have paid the $38,000, or would you have drawn the line? Drop pay or boundary in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. If this story touched something real in you, hit like and subscribe. I share stories like this every week about family, about boundaries, about finding your voice when the people closest to you try to silence it. Check the description for another story I think you'll connect with. I'll see you in the next one.